Well, hello everybody, and welcome to Sunburst Sunday Meditation Service. My name is Greg, and our topic for today is living in harmony with nature. And the inspirational quote that's used for this was something that Brother Norm, the founder of Sunburst, had said. He said, "We are created to be caretakers of this garden world." And with Earth Day coming up this week, this was thought to be an appropriate topic, living in harmony with nature. When I think about my own relationship with nature, one of the first things that came to me as I was contemplating this topic was an old commercial that happened at the end of the 60s or the early 70s. I was a teenager at the time, and in the commercial there was an Indian, and the Indian was canoeing down this pristine river, and then all of a sudden his canoe was basically moving through floating trash and milk cartons and old tires, and then you see him standing on a hill above a freeway, and you see once again people throwing litter out of their cars. The side of the road is strewn with people's throwaways, and the camera gets close up on his face and you see tears rolling down his cheeks. And this commercial had a huge effect on me because 50 years later I still remember it and the impact that it had on me. And at the time I was very much involved with learning about our Native American Indians. And this told me a whole lot about the relationship of the Native American with the planet. I ran across a quote probably 20 years ago in a book called Touch the Earth, and it was said in the late 1800s, and it was the person who spoke these words was a Lakota Sioux Indian chief by the name of Standing Bear. He said, "The Lakota was a true naturist, a lover of nature. He loved the earth and all the things on the earth, the attachment growing with age. The old people came literally to love the soil, and they sat and reclined on the ground with a feeling of being close to a mothering power. It was good for the skin to touch the earth, and the old people liked to remove their moccasins and walk barefoot on the sacred earth. Their teepees were built on the earth, and their altars were made of earth. The birds flew in the air, came to rest upon the earth, and it was the final abiding place of all things that lived and grew. The soil was soothing, strengthening, cleansing, and healing. That is why the old Indian still sits on the earth instead of propping himself up and away from its life-giving forces. To him, to sit or lie upon the ground is to be able to think more deeply and to feel more keenly. He can see more clearly into the mysteries of life and come closer in kinship with the other lives around him. Kinship with all creatures of the earth, sky, and water was a real and active principle. For the animal and bird world, there existed a brotherly feeling that kept the Lakota safe among them, and so close did some of the Lakotas come to their feathered and furred friends that in true brotherhood they spoke a common tongue. The old Lakota was wise. He knew that man's heart away from nature becomes hard. He knew that lack of respect for growing, living things soon led to a lack of respect for humans too. Standing Bear's prophecy was true. Today, many people who settled those lands live in a completely synthetic world with their only connection to Mother Earth or nature being a simple houseplant. People today don't know where their food comes from, They don't touch the earth. They don't run their fingers through the soil. They can't see the stars at night because of all the light pollution in our urban areas. In this modern age, it's become easy to lose our relationship with nature. Even more insidious in our culture is the idea that nature is expendable. If mankind needs it, then nature's resources are there for our disposal. We treat nature, instead of something sacred, we treat nature as a product. We run the danger of losing our relationship with nature. So what is nature? At the dawn of creation, the masculine and feminine aspects of spirit combine to form the great central sun. And as that light from the great central sun and that energy moved forward and outward, it formed our universe and our planets and our mountains and our forests and our waters, our grasses, our animals, even mankind. It is the feminine aspect of spirit that maintains and sustains all creation. We refer to her as Divine Mother, and she upholds and sustains all things as Mother's nature. Think about it. If we lose our connection with nature, we are actually losing our connection with our divine parents, particularly our Divine Mother. And because of that, we're losing touch with our own divinity. So what are some of the things that we can do in order to cultivate harmony with nature? Number one, and this is so simple, I'm almost embarrassed to say it, spend time in nature. I know it sounds ridiculously simple, but it's true. But you might be saying to yourself, what if I live in a city or an urban sprawl and I don't have access to forests and trees and nature? Well, some of the things that you can do is visit parks, go hiking with a friend, or sit on your patio or balcony and study the trees that you can see, the flowering plants or other plants that you have there on your patio. Study a leaf. Take a few minutes and actually study the leaf, its colors, its shape, how it reacts to the wind, its texture, its glossiness or dullness. Study all aspects of that leaf. Watch a bee land on a flower and watch how that bee works laboriously all day long to gather honey. One of the things I enjoy watching in nature is when there's wind. I love to watch the trees because to me, when trees are moving in rhythm, it appears to me as though nature is actually dancing. So watch a tree dance. Listen to the sounds of nature. Smell the smells of nature. Touch the dirt. Sit on the ground. Sit by a stream and watch all the life that interacts with that water. Have an animal companion. As a child, I lived in a national park. It was actually Crater Lake National Park, and my father was a forest ranger there. And we lived in a cabin in a ranger's camp. I was the only child there, so my only friends were my friends in nature. And my best friend was a raccoon who shared my lunch and my snacks with me every day. I was too young to know that raccoons are wild animals. I just knew that I loved that raccoon and that raccoon loved me, and he never hurt me or never caused any damage. I just only knew that raccoon as my friend who I loved. In meditation this past week, I was contemplating my relationship with nature through my life. And I remember an incident that happened when I was about 12 or 13 years old. My friends and I decided we were going to build a tree fort in the forest. And this was in a rural area of Oregon, about 30 miles outside of Portland. And we drug all the scrap lumber and tools we would need to start the project. And then the day came when we were actually going to start building the treehouse. And I took a hammer in my hand, and I took a nail, and I was about to nail that 2x4 into the tree when I just realized, this is going to hurt the tree. I can't do this. And as I was meditating about that, I realized that what I was responding to was the voice of Divine Mother, Mother's nature, saying, you don't have to hurt this tree. The tree house did get built, but I'm happy to say that I never nailed a single nail into a tree during the building of that tree fort. You know, Norm had something to say about spending time in nature, and I think it's a really interesting quote because he tells us how to use nature to develop our consciousness. He said, nature, the mother of all life forms, in her infinite variety, is the supreme teacher. Study her, for she springs forth from the imagination of our Creator. More time should be spent deeply studying, observing, and meditating in nature. The mother of all life forms exists in the forests and in the valleys and in the mountains and in the streams, in the wind and in the sea. Be alone in nature. Meditate there with all her life forms and listen. Another way that we can cultivate harmony with nature is through our meditation. When we meditate, the scientific application of the Kriya meditation technique, we, with our inhalation, draw up the feminine energy from our root chakra. That feminine energy has been referred to as the Kundalini, the coiled serpent, or that coiled, tightly packed energy that once it's released can move up the astral spine or sushumna to the crown of our head. And as we exhale in meditation, we draw down the light through our crown, through all of that sushumna, eventually to meet the divine feminine. So we have the divine feminine coming up and the divine masculine coming down. And that's what Brother Norm called, when these two energies meet in the heart center, he called it the mystical union. When mother's power and father's power were combined, the offspring is a new child. And that new child is you, reborn in Christ consciousness. And as your Christ consciousness begins to develop more and more, combined, the masculine and feminine powers move all the way up into the throne of God in our highest chakras. I have experienced this process. I have witnessed this process from outside my body. And I can promise you with regular, deep meditation that you can actually begin to raise your level of consciousness. This will shift your connection with all living things. You'll begin to realize that you love all mankind, that you love all of creation, all of nature, all the trees, all the animals. It's a feeling of oneness. It's a feeling of companionship with all of creation. And with that, we begin to be able to see the divine in all of nature. This is true harmony with nature. Paramahansa Yogananda demonstrated the power of this connection with nature while he was still living in India. um, under the tutelage of his guru, he started the Ranchi School for Boys, which combined world scientific learning along with spiritual learning. And part of that was spending time in nature. So Yogananda took the boys on a field trip, and they went deep into the forest, and they were accompanied by an ox cart driver and an ox cart being pulled by several oxen. And they decided to stop during the night, and the boys went into a small cabin and got prepared to eat and sleep for the evening. And the ox cart driver took care of the cart and unhitched the oxen and put them in the barn. And during the night, everyone awoke with the sound of the roar of a large tiger. And Yogananda heard that sound and was awakened, and he said to the boys and the ox cart driver, are there any volunteers to go and join me to close the gates on the barn before we lose our animals? And of course, there were no volunteers. And what I'm about to tell you, please don't try this at home. But he walked out of the small cabin, and the tiger approached him from the edge of the woods. And as the tiger approached them and their eyes connected, Yogananda could feel his love for the tiger, and the tiger began to sense the love that Yogananda had for him. The tiger approached Yogananda, rolled over on its back, and Yogananda scratched its belly. The tiger got up and rambled back into the forest. So how was Yogananda able to do this? How would anybody be able to do this? Well, his connection with Divine Mother was so strong that when he looked at that tiger, all he saw was another expression of his divine parents, Divine Mother and Divine Father. And that tiger also felt that deep love and basically bowed to Yogananda in respect and allowed Yogananda to scratch him. If we truly love our Divine Mother or Mother's nature, then we can learn how to love all human beings. The old Indian was right in his prophecy. Man's heart away from nature becomes hard. Lack of respect for growing living things soon leads to the lack of respect for humans too. So let's take a few minutes to move into quiet time, meditation time. I'd like to have you close your eyes and begin to focus on your breath. And as you breathe in, drawing that breath up your astral spine, try to bring it all the way up to the crown of your head, and then hold that breath, and then exhale, drawing light down through the astral spine, through all your energy centers once again, and then repeat. I would like you to consider your own relationship with nature and how connected you are to our divine parents, and what are the things that you can do in your own life that will help you to have more harmony with nature. Well, welcome back. As I prepared my thoughts for today, I was thinking, what are some principles here that I can pull out of what I'm thinking? And so I came up with 3 principles that refer to our relationship with Mother's nature. Yogananda said this. He said, "Man was made to be Lord over nature, and the forces of nature in turn work together to serve man. Man negates his lordship by faulty, self-serving stewardship of his earthly environment." We have seen how humankind has hurt nature and how humans' actions have negatively impacted our soils, our crops, our rivers and our oceans, our forests, our trees, our insects, our animals, even humans themselves. So the first principle that came to me was, when mankind hurts nature, he only hurts himself. We are fortunate to live in a time where consciousness is on the rise. Our younger generations today are extremely interested in alternative energy, permaculture, living on the land closer to nature, sustainable living, creating sustainable housing, and even using nature's resources in a more sustainable fashion. And collectively, mankind's awareness of our stewardship of nature is on the rise, and it will continue to grow as we move into this ascending Dwapara Yuga. This is important for our future. Individually, as we grow in harmony with nature, we grow in love for our fellow man and our love and connection of all of nature. When we develop greater harmony with nature, we begin to realize we're all connected. We're not divided. We're not broken up. We don't belong to any particular ethnic group or race. We're just all in this together. Which brings me to principle number 2. When we live in harmony with nature, it brings about a different world, a better world. Our Divine Mother is always nearby. She is sustaining all of nature as well as all of our very lives. The great coiled energy of our Divine Mother that's stored in our root chakra is awaiting the time when we purposefully raise that energy up towards our heart chakra and eventually to our crown chakra, raising our level of consciousness. Meditation is the tool that allows us to speed up and complete this process. Our earthly mothers appreciate it when we recognize their achievements, such as a great meal, or an attractive garden, or a beautifully decorated home. And just the same, I believe that our Divine Mother appreciates it when we recognize how she beautified this great garden we call Earth, and that she sustains and maintains it, including our very lives. In addition, she's ready and waiting for each of us to begin that journey of raising our consciousness. You know, Brother Norm had several experiences that are recorded in his autobiography of meeting and experiencing Divine Mother. And on one occasion, Norm, looking into the face of Divine Mother, said, "Oh, Mother, I thought I'd never see you again." And Divine Mother answered simply, my son, I am always near." This is Divine Mother's promise. Nurture your soul in Mother's nature. Feel her closeness. Let Divine Mother guide you into Christ consciousness. Which brings us to principle 3. Nature is our Divine Mother's garden. When we learn to be in harmony with nature, we are actually developing harmony with our Divine Mother. Thank you so much for joining us here today. We send you love. We wish for you health and safety, and we're hoping that we can all return and meet together in this very temple soon. Namaste.